Welcome to episode 26 in our series on Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto's The Path of the Just. And we're at chapter 17 now, and we're on the rung of purity. And in this episode we're going to learn how to acquire this concept of purity. So what is purity? We've discussed in the last episode. It's something that you foster in your mind. It's a contemplation of attitudes regarding your service towards God. And in this chapter, the Ramchal is going to touch on various aspects of perhaps what you would call nowadays meditation. How you must contemplate things before the action in order to prepare yourself to be in the right state of mind to perform the act or deed with purity and pure intention, so that you really kind of supercharge the action with this holiness that is your intention. Like I've said many times before, the intention is almost like the fuel that you douse the action with, and once it's lit, it will blaze furiously. So with holiness. So let's begin. So Ramchal starts. Acquiring this virtue is easy for one who has, through effort, already acquired the virtues taught until now. When one contemplates and examines the base nature of the pleasures of the world and their benefits, as I have written previously, he will find them repulsive, and he will regard them only as the ills and defects of the corporeal, obscure and crude side of human nature. And when it becomes absolutely clear to him that they really are defects and ills, it will no doubt be easier for him to disassociate himself from them and to remove them from his heart. Therefore, the more he is able to develop a deep and enduring awareness of the base nature of corporeality and its pleasures, the easier it will be for him to purify his thoughts and his heart and totally prevent them from drawing him towards the evil inclination. In his actions in relation to the corporeal, he should always behave like one who is being coerced by his natural instincts. However, in the same manner that we divided purity of thought into two separate categories, the one in reference to physical deeds and the other in reference to deeds devoted to the service of the eternal, likewise the intellectual effort needed to acquire it falls into two categories. Thus, in order to purify one's thought in the domain of corporal actions, one must continually scrutinize the base nature of the physical world and its pleasures, as I have written. But to purify one's thought in the type of deeds devoted to the service of the eternal, one must expand his awareness of the delusory nature of honor and the deceptions that are connected with it, and he must train himself to flee from honor. Consequently, when he is occupied with serving the eternal, he will be cleansed of the influence that comes from the admiration and praise of his fellows, and his thought will be directed solely to our Master, whom we extol and who is the source of all our goodness and perfection. There is no other. Similarly, it states in Deuteronomy chapter 10 verse 21, He is your praise and He is your God. Among those deeds, the direct one towards the acquisition of this virtue is the manner in which one prepares himself regarding the divine service and the mitzvot. This means that one should not approach the fulfillment of a mitzvah impulsively, when his presence of mind is deficient and he cannot therefore think clearly about what he is doing. Rather, he should arouse himself and patiently prepare his heart until he enters the stage of contemplation. Then he should contemplate what he is planning to do and before whom he is planning to do it. For once he begins this process of analysis, it will be easy to discard any extraneous motives and to internalize the truly desirable motivation. Let us recall that Hasidim and Harishonim, those who practiced piety in the earlier generation, used to devote 1 hour before their prayers, let's quote from Brachot 30b, to directing their hearts to the divine presence. They surely did not spend that hour idly. Rather, they aroused and prepared their hearts for the forthcoming prayer, divesting themselves of any foreign thoughts and filling their spirits with the requisite fear and love of the eternal. As it says in Job 11:13, if you have prepared your heart, you may then spread your hands towards him. That's very, very true. I know that I have trouble sometimes when I'm davening to clear my mind of things that are going on, perhaps business things that are going on during the day or other things that I have to make once I make this active kind of clearing of my mind before prayers, and I resolutely remind myself to keep that state of mind, it normally helps me a lot. In fact, sometimes when I'm learning and I really want to widen my mind and clear it, I actually think of one of Rambam's very famous quotes. He said, "Anticipate charity by preventing poverty." And I've always thought of that concept to be like a widescreen state of thought. It's an incredible concept that's wrapped up only in a few words. But when you think about it, it's like a widescreen thought. It's very high. It's a very high thought, and it's like expands like a bridge in its expanse. And I've always kind of just meditated on the concept of anticipating charity by preventing poverty. It's a huge thought, and it kind of clears my mind. It's almost like a mantra, a meditative thought. And sometimes before learning, if I want to clear my mind and widen it, I just contemplate that idea. And the Ramchal here is talking about the great Rabbonim. He used to do that before davening for 1 hour in order that their minds were ready. As it says in Job, if you have prepared your heart, you may then spread your hands towards him. And the Ramchal continues. The factors that undermine this virtue are the result of insufficiency of examination in the aforementioned matters, i.e., the lack of awareness regarding the base nature of pleasure, the pursuit of honor, and insufficient preparation for the service of the eternal. The first two factors sway a person's thinking, luring him towards other motives, like an adulteress who consorts unfaithfully with other men. These externally oriented motives are called the adultery of the heart, as it is written in Bamidbar 15 verse 39, and you must not be searching, following your heart and your eyes after which you tend to stray. For the tendency of the heart is to stray from the ideal perspective that it was meant to cleave to, embracing instead vanities and false appearances. And the latter factor, preparing oneself insufficiently, prevents the removal from one's heart of that innate thoughtlessness that derives from the material world. This thoughtlessness befouls the divine service with its stench. We will now explain the virtue of piety. So that concludes the 17th chapter, where we've dealt with how we acquire purity. And he's mentioned that we're about to step on the next rung of the ladder, which is the virtue of piety. But just to recap about purity and his method of acquiring it. So the concept is we must meditate on the action we're about to do, clear our mind of anything that deals with everyday life, and just for that moment, as we're in the moment of the deed or the thought, that we have our heart and mind directly purely towards God and making that act in His name. And I think we can all feel the difference between when we've perhaps said a portion of our prayers whilst having in the back of our minds what we're going to be doing that day, or certain things that may have gone on that day, as opposed to those times that we've prayed intently. We feel like, and with real devotion, we can almost feel it in our being, in our soul, this kind of sunshine that you would feel from doing an act with a pure heart and doing something whilst distracted with other thoughts. There's a clear difference. And God, more than anybody else, knows that difference and appreciates the difference. He almost would, you would understand if he would discard hours of prayers when they haven't been 100% focused on him. If we're thinking half of the time about business things or other things, what we're going to have for breakfast in the morning, while we're davening the Shemona Esrei, it's almost worthless because we don't have our mind into it. But if we prepare ourselves before davening, before prayers, before actions, and we have in our mind what the intention should be, it's a different kettle of fish. And so I look forward to next episode 18, stepping up on the next rung of the ladder. Now we will be on the virtue of piety.